Which one? Hang on 1 second.
Thanks for having me this morning.
Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. Tomorrow is your last day in Congress, so incredibly significant to have you here today, Congresswoman. You and President Trump, of course, had an extraordinary break last year. We'll talk all about that in just a moment, but I do want to talk about something you said this weekend in the wake of this attack against Venezuela, removing Nicolas Maduro. You said that the administration's actions were not America first. Now, the president was asked about this idea yesterday. I want to play that clip and get your reaction on the other side. Take a look.
Mr. President, why is running a country in South America America first?
Well, I think it is because we want to surround ourselves with good neighbors. We want to surround ourselves with stability. We want to surround ourselves with energy. We have tremendous energy in that country. It's very important that we protect it. We need that for ourselves. We need that for the world.
Why do you disagree, Congresswoman?
Well, you know, I served on the Homeland Security Committee for 3 years, and I am overwhelmingly in support of a strong border. I impeached Secretary Mayorkas. Those were my articles of impeachment that passed the House because fentanyl overdoses skyrocketed to 280% in my own district. And the majority of American fentanyl overdoses and deaths come from Mexico. Those are the Mexican cartels that are killing Americans. And so my pushback here is if this was really about narco terrorists and about protecting Americans from cartels and drugs being brought into America, the Trump administration would be attacking the Mexican cartels. Now, I am not defending Maduro. And of course, I'm happy for the people of Venezuela to be liberated. But Americans celebrated the liberation of the Iraqi people after Saddam Hussein. They celebrated the liberation of the Libyan people after Gaddafi. And this is the same Washington playbook that we are so sick and tired of, that doesn't serve the American people, but actually serves the big corporations, the banks, and the oil executives. And so my pushback here is on the Trump administration that campaigned on Make America Great Again, that we thought was putting America first. I want to see domestic policy be the priority that helps Americans afford life after 4 disastrous years of the Biden administration. I want to see domestic policies that prioritizes jobs and affordable housing for Americans after 4 disastrous years of the Biden administration. And I want to see domestic priorities that put Americans first in regards of healthcare. Health insurance costs too much, car insurance, home insurance. And these are issues that matter to Americans. We don't consider Venezuela our neighborhood. Our neighborhood is right here in the 50 United States, not in the Southern Hemisphere.
Well, let me ask you, because President Trump says he gets to decide what America first means.
Oh, wait. I'm sorry, you guys. It's echoing. I'm sorry. I walked away from my screen for a second. Is it still echoing? Can you guys tell me? Everything I search for educational for use purposes. I'm going to get right into this video. You guys, I'm going to play it. Let me know if it's echoing bad. Yep, it's echoing. Oh, okay. Maybe I should start over. I don't know. How do I fix it? A little? Didn't she resign? Okay, let me see. Maybe I need to change my mic. I've been dying to get to this video all day with Marjorie. Okay, let me see. Sure, more interviews than books. I don't know what y'all talking about. Am I echoing too, or is it just my video? Okay, wait a minute. Let me switch my microphone. Maybe that's why. I don't know. Shut up. You're mad because Trump didn't give you on. Let me get out the chat. No echo now. Okay, you guys, I'm going to start the video. All right, thank you. And then you guys let me know. Whew. So just let me know. All right. Why am I so small? What you mean? I don't know what you mean for. Okay. Let me know, you guys.
Does America First mean whatever President Trump says it does?
You know, America First should mean what was promised on the campaign trail in 2024. So my understanding of America First is strictly for the American people, not for the big donors that donate to big politicians, not for the special interests that constantly roam the halls in Washington, and not.
Should I? It's echoing still. No, it's not good. All right, you guys. I don't know. Maybe I can. Today's just not my day. Yes, you did. She did. I could mute mic. Turn your mic off when you're playing the video. But I don't think it'll play like that. Let me try. Okay, I'm going to turn off my mic and then I'm going to play it. Let me know. Mute my phone. I'm on my laptop.
Not foreign countries that demand their priorities put first over Americans. America First actually means for the American people, and the American people have been put last consistently decades and decades by both political parties for far too long. My kids' generation, my kids are 22, 26, and 28, are looking at a future where this whole entire generation doesn't think they'll ever see a Social Security check. They don't believe they'll ever be able to afford to own their own home. And 50-year mortgages are really a slap in the face. It's insulting. Americans don't want $2,000 stimulus checks as a payoff. They want to have good policies brought forth for them, because you want to know something, Kristen? They voted for this administration, and their small dollar donation should matter. And MAGA has its own enemy list, and the enemies of the world are not on their enemy list, and they're tired of being ignored.
Let me ask you about your breakup with President Trump. Part of that was over this battle over releasing the Epstein files in September. After a meeting with a group of Epstein survivors, you'd held a news conference and threatened to identify some of the men who had abused them. The New York Times Magazine reported that President Trump called you in your office afterwards and, quote, according to a staff member, everyone in the suite of rooms could hear him yelling at her as she listened to him on speakerphone. Green says she expressed her perplexity over his intransigence. According to Green, Trump replied, "My friends will get hurt." What do you think President Trump meant by "my friends will get hurt," Congresswoman?
You know, I've been asking that question ever since, and I make no apologies for standing with women and victims of rape, because in this country, there are far too many victims of rape. All walks of men and women alike have been victims of rape or some type of child abuse. And the Epstein files is significant. And demanding transparency for that should not lead to the president, who I helped get elected and supported far more than pretty much any Republican in Washington. It should not have led to him calling me a traitor. That is absolutely unacceptable, and the American people reject it. Yeah. But here's what should be prioritized is victims. And victims of an entire system that protected the rich, powerful elites. And that's what Americans are absolutely sick and tired of. That was part of what they voted for in 2024. They voted to tear down the system that protects the rich, powerful elites. They voted to tear down the system that consistently goes for foreign wars and regime change. They voted to tear down the system that does nothing for regular, hardworking Americans and only consistently props up the big banks, the military industrial complex, and the oil executives and major industries. And, you know, you want to know something? After this regime change in Venezuela, I fear that we're going to see jobs just move south, because we're already hearing about big corporations lining up their trips to Venezuela for the next big business opportunity that exists, while Americans sit here with no options that are going to provide them with good paying jobs and affordable health care.
Congresswoman, let me finally ask you about one of the rifts and concerns in the Republican Party over the issue of anti-Semitism. In 2022, you did speak at a conference organized by Nick Fuentes. He's a white nationalist. He recently said that Hitler is, quote, cool. Let me ask you about your perspective right now. Do you believe there is room in the Republican Party for Nick Fuentes and anyone who shares that ideology, that Hitler is cool?
Here's my situation and here's my belief on people's speech. I will always defend the First Amendment and free speech, no matter what kind of speech it is, even speech that I find abhorrent or I disagree with, because I think that makes us uniquely American. What concerns me is that when we move towards censorship, and we saw that happen during COVID. I myself had my own Twitter account permanently banned because I spoke out against FDA rushed approval of the COVID vaccines. And I spoke out against lockdowns and forced masking. And, you know, when I look at people saying that certain types of speech needs to be censored, and we have been hearing that lately, that raises great concern for me. So I think it's something that we have to take seriously. Is, as Americans, we don't have to agree with each other, and we certainly can disagree, but we should overwhelmingly agree that free speech must be protected.
Well, let me just, I mean, during COVID, you did compare lockdowns to the Holocaust. I understand your point about free speech, but let me press you there, because Nick Fuentes has said on his podcast, quote, Hitler was awesome.
That's a misquote. Kristen, that's a misquote. That's a misquote. That's not correct. I compared vaccine cards, being forced to take a vaccine in order to be able to keep a job or buy or sell or be able to be admitted to restaurants. I compared that. I was not comparing. The Holocaust was horrible. I'm not comparing anything to that.
Let me just ask you, though, because Nick Fuentes has said on his podcast, Hitler was awesome. Hitler was right. The Holocaust didn't happen. He also participated in the Charlottesville rally where demonstrators chanted, Jews will not replace us. Senator Ted Cruz says this is a time for choosing. He says, if you're embracing someone who says Hitler is cool, you are complicit in that evil. Do you think Ted Cruz has a point that you'd be complicit in that evil to support or in any way fail to denounce what Nick Fuentes has said?
Kristen, I don't know Nick Fuentes. I don't even have his phone number. He doesn't have my phone number. I spoke at a conference of his because it was largely attended by young Americans, and I care about that generation, and I went there to talk directly to them. So I really am not familiar with what Nick Fuentes says, whether it's on social media or his podcast. Nor do I pay that much attention to Ted Cruz. He routinely attacks me. The things that I focus on is the needs of the American
But should he be embraced in the Republican Party, Congresswoman? Is there room for him in the Republican Party?
Kristen, I don't think that this is about the Republican Party, and it's not about Nick Fuentes. I see this about free speech, and I'm going to sit here and tell you over and over again, I defend the First Amendment. I will defend free speech, whether I like the speech, agree with the speech, disagree with the speech, hate the speech. I'm going to defend it because I can point to many other people in the Democrat Party that I completely don't like their speech. I can point to members of the press that have written horrific stories that I think are lies, and I can say, I don't like that speech, but I still defend free speech, and I still defend the press having rights to publish stories, because I think that's how you hold the government accountable. And I want a press that tells the truth to the American people, not not slants it or paints it one way, but strictly publishes the truth. And that's what Americans really want. So I'm not going to engage in weighing in on who deserves to be where. I'm going to strictly tell you I will defend free speech at all costs.
Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, again, thank you for joining us right before your last day in Congress. We'll track your political future or any future very closely. Really appreciate it.
We thank you for watching. And remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch
capture of Venezuela leader Nicolas Maduro. We have now learned today he is set to make his first court appearance in New York City as soon as tomorrow, according to what a court spokesperson tells NBC News. You're looking at some of those new images of Maduro here with Today in Venezuela, people picking up the pieces. Literally, this new video coming into us after the U.S. struck Venezuela, capturing both Maduro and his wife in this surprise military operation unlike anything we've seen in a generation. Both Maduro and his wife are facing drug and weapons charges here in the U.S. This is another picture of him. He's appearing in handcuffs next to DEA agents right here. You see him obviously in that blue sweatshirt. We're also seeing this new picture of Celia Flores, his wife, at a New York City heliport last night. And new today, we are also hearing from the Secretary of State, who says while the U.S. is not at war with Venezuela, American troops will stay in the region as, in his words, leverage.
The first steps are securing what's in the national interest of the United States and also beneficial to the people of Venezuela. And those are the things that we're focused on right now. No more drug trafficking, no more Iran Hezbollah presence there, and no more using the oil industry to enrich all our adversaries.
Big questions now remain ahead, including who is in charge in Venezuela. How will the U.S. work with that interim Venezuelan government, and what it means that, as President Trump says, the U.S. will run the country for the foreseeable future, especially with the leaders in Venezuela now sounding defiant, at least publicly. There's the question of if and when we could see even more of a military escalation. President Trump says he is not ruling out putting troops on the ground there. And then, of course, the domestic pushback here at home, with some lawmakers calling the extraction of Maduro illegal, with concerns the U.S. could get drawn into a protracted conflict. We have team coverage here today. Valerie Castro standing by outside the detention center where Maduro is being held in New York. Our Meet the Press moderator, Kristen Welker, is with us too. But I want to start with Julie Sirkin, along with Keir Simmons. Julie is traveling with the president in West Palm Beach, Florida. She is joining us now. And Julie, this is a significant day in the Trump administration. One day after, right, that extraction of Maduro, President Trump is finishing up his holiday break. But we did hear from Secretary of State Rubio this morning laying out what he sees as the next steps.
Exactly right. We heard from the Secretary of State, who spoke to our Kristen Welker, justifying the operation that the administration is referring to as audacious that took place overnight on Friday. The president, for his part, is spending the day at his golf club before flying back to Washington, D.C. later tonight. It was after a long night in which he had watched this operation unfold from a secure room in Mar-a-Lago. We saw pictures of that come through being posted by the president yesterday, but we are hearing a significant defense of the criticism that the administration is now facing, mostly from Democrats, also from some in the MAGA base, questioning why it seems that the U.S. is escalating its military power, escalating perhaps and taking this step in Venezuela. The Vice President, J.D. Vance, who we are told did not watch the operation from Mar-a-Lago. He was not in that space for security reasons. He posted on X, Hallie, a significant defense of this operation, of the fact that they had to go in there for narco-terrorism and drug reasons, saying about 20 years ago, Venezuela expropriated American oil property and until recently used that property to get rich. He went on to say, great powers don't act like that. And that is why the administration took this step, Hallie.
And Julie, we're also getting some new details on sort of the TikTok, as they call it, the minute by minute of how this operation unfolded.
Yeah, the whole operation, Hallie, took about a little over 2 hours. We know the president ordered the operation, according to what he told myself and other reporters yesterday in Mar-a-Lago at 10:46 p.m. on Friday. The weather conditions were just right. This is something they had prepared for, Hallie, for months. They had prepared in executing plans for this operation. Of course, it was extremely risky. No U.S. service members were killed. There were some that were injured, but I'm told by a White House official that they are in stable condition. The president, as I mentioned, watched this operation unfold with some of his closest cabinet members. And we also now know that the CIA played a heavy hand in this before the military became involved for months, essentially looking at Maduro's movements, even so far as tracking his pets, according to General Dan Kane and what he told us yesterday. And we also know that the CIA had a human source, at least one, inside Maduro's circle. That is how they were able to get so precise. 150 different aircraft circling Venezuela just moments before military personnel went into the ground in Caracas and ultimately took over Maduro, took him out and his wife, and transported them to the U.S., where we saw those images that you showed of them being processed last night. So certainly there is a long road ahead, many questions, including what U.S. running the country, as the president said, will look like, and the administration presumably today is spending that time trying to figure it out and build all those pieces out, Hallie.
Julie Sirkin, thanks. Let me get to our Meet the Press moderator, Kristen Welker, who is joining us now. And Kristen, a busy morning for you, having that conversation with the Secretary of State on regime change, on this idea of troops in the region as leverage. Explain that, Kristen, and based on your analysis, how you see the next couple of days playing out, especially with some of this domestic pushback here at home from some of the critics of the president's move.
Yeah, great question, Hallie. Look, Secretary Rubio was clear at this point in time, there aren't boots on the ground inside Venezuela, but that is still very much an open possibility, underscored the fact that they expect officials in Venezuela to cooperate with the U.S. government. And I think there are a number of key questions. And one of the big ones, Hallie, revolves around timeline. I asked Secretary Rubio effectively, how long is this transition going to last? When will elections be held? And Hallie, it was really notable. He said he believes it's premature to be talking about the issue of elections right now because effectively this transition is just getting underway. I really tried to pin him down on who exactly is running Venezuela. Is he running Venezuela as the Secretary of State? And notably, after I pressed him a couple of different times, he said, yes, of course, he is involved, but he pointed to the fact that the entire national security team is playing a role at the same time. And to that big question, is the United States effectively at war with Venezuela? He said, no, absolutely not. But he did say the U.S. is at war with narco-terrorists, that this is effectively a message and should be seen as a message to other leaders. And then, Hallie, I pressed him on the history of this, the fact that historically speaking, America does not have a good track record when it comes to going into taking over other countries. Take a listen to a little bit of that exchange. Regime change, historically speaking, has not gone very well for the United States. In Iraq, in Libya, to name a few examples. Can you assure Americans, the people of the United States, that this time will be different?
Well, here's what's happened. We've got this phobia built up and this sort of thing that's psyche. Number one, Venezuela looks nothing like Libya. It looks nothing like Iraq. It looks nothing like Afghanistan. It looks nothing like the Middle East other than the Iranian agents that are running through there plotting against America. Okay, these are Western countries with long traditions among their at a people-to-people and cultural level and ties to the United States. So there's nothing like that. Number two, this is about the national interest of the United States. And what I'm confident of is we are in a safer and better place because we're taking it seriously.
Hallie, you also asked about the president's allies, the reaction on Capitol Hill largely falling at this point along party lines. Democrats, including leader Jeffries, who I interviewed today on Meet the Press, saying that while he believes that Nicolas Maduro is a thug who deserves to be deposed, he believes the administration went about it in the wrong way because they did not consult with Congress. Republicans broadly supportive of this move. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Taylor Greene, though, a part of the president's MAGA base, who, of course, had that extraordinary split with President Trump, sharply critical of this move, essentially saying this is the Washington playbook the American people are so sick and tired of, saying that the president's more focused on foreign policy than domestic issues like affordability. Hallie, does she represent a broader crack within the MAGA base? At this point, it doesn't seem so. It seems as though the MAGA base is still standing largely behind him. But will that continue to be true if the U.S. involvement in Venezuela stretches on? Hallie?
Kristen Welker, much to follow on that front. We're glad to have you with us today, Kristen. Thank you. Let me bring in now our correspondent who is posted up in Brooklyn, New York, outside the detention center where Maduro is being held, Valerie Castro, who is joining us now. Give us a sense of the scene here, Valerie, because we know that there are some groups who are gathering to protest his capture, even as we've also seen many Venezuelans and Venezuelan Americans celebrating the end of his dictatorship in Venezuela.
Yeah, Hallie, and the largest protest group that was here actually just broke up within the last few minutes, but it was a group of about 40 to 50 people, as you said, protesting the U.S. actions that were taken in Venezuela in just the last day or so. They were calling for Maduro's release. They say they are against the U.S. getting involved in any sort of foreign conflict with Venezuela. Take a listen to what woman had to say, arguing that this is really not about liberty for the Venezuelan people. Take a listen.
Trump said he's going to run the country. We know that money is never going to go to the Venezuelan people. It's going to go into the pockets of these CEOs of these like oil companies, and that's just going to benefit from all of this, not the American people here who have been struggling economically for a really long time.
Again, those protest groups just broke up within the last few minutes or so, but they were largely here across the street, right across from the Metropolitan Detention Center where Maduro was brought late last night. He was delivered here in Manhattan by helicopter, then eventually brought here to this detention center where he will await his court hearing in the next day or so. Hallie?
And do you notice any kind of elevated security posture at this detention center, Valerie? Had there been people coming by to try to get a look at it for themselves? I'm curious about the sense of scene where you are.
There are some people coming by to take a look, rather large, rather small groups at this point, I should say. The NYPD has placed barricades, kind of just to section off the media and give them a safe place to stand, as well as the protest groups. They've kind of cordoned people off across the street. But there have been high-profile defendants here at the Metropolitan Detention Center. One who is currently here besides Maduro is Luigi Mangione, the man accused of murdering United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. Ghislaine Maxwell was held here during a time Sean Diddy Combs also spent several months here awaiting during the duration of his trial. So a lot of high-profile people. This is a federal detention center, people facing federal charges. Hallie?
Valerie Castro live for us there in Brooklyn. Valerie, thank you very much. We're going to talk in just a moment about that apparent court date that could be as soon as tomorrow for Maduro. But I want to take you first to Venezuela here, because we are now today, brand new, just into us, getting a closer look at the scale of the destruction from the attack on Venezuela, the extraction of Maduro. You heard Julie Sirkin and others lay out what exactly happened. 150 military aircraft from the U.S. coming in, landing. There was obviously fire exchange. This was the scene you're looking at right here in one of the places targeted. You can see some damage now at what appeared to be a residential complex, just really rubble here. I want to bring you the view on the ground inside Venezuela with journalist Ana Vanessa Herrero. She's based in the capital of Caracas. Ana watched the attack happen in real time. Ana, thank you very much for being back with us again. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Well, you and I spoke yesterday, and you described this feeling of uncertainty among many Venezuelans that you were talking with. Long lines at supermarkets, long lines at pharmacies as people were sort of scrambling in the hours after the attack. Here we are now, day two, effectively. Give us a sense of what you're seeing on the ground. If you still have us, Ana.
I don't know if you. I think I lost you, but I don't know if you're listening.
You're good.
Hearing me. Are you hearing me? Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I was telling you that what we're experiencing today, it's a little bit of what we saw yesterday, but calmer. So less people in the streets, but less lines, moving faster. People wondering still how much they should get. More supermarkets and pharmacies opening to welcome the people who want to stock whatever they need for the hours and the days to come. And it's interesting because while we're seeing that footage, I actually visited one place that was also affected by one of the bombing, by the several bombings here in Caracas. And I was talking to the owners, I was talking to the neighbors, and they were telling me, why would the United States attack a residential area or somewhere near a residential area if they're not military targets? Although this place that I'm talking about is near a communication tower that serves for the military. So they were wondering, and even one of them said, we want to ask the United States to help us rebuild our house because this is not our fault and we somehow got affected. So right now, today, we're seeing more people trying to understand what happened and really getting all that in.
What about the leadership in Venezuela right now? Because the Venezuelan Vice President, Delcy Rodriguez, we've talked about her quite a bit here. She was obviously at Maduro's side for quite a while. She's now serving as interim president. She has struck, at least publicly, a defiant tone, insisting multiple times that there is only one president of Venezuela, and it is Nicolas Maduro. What is your sense of who the Venezuelan people that you're talking with want to see take power? We know that President Trump has largely dismissed the idea of the opposition leader, Maria Corina Machado, taking over. Give me a sense of what you're hearing on that front.
Well, believe it or not, people are not talking about that. I mean, the conversation here on the ground is not revolving around who is next in line. If Delcy Rodriguez is going to, for example, which would be a very good question to ask, if she's going to follow the Maduro's line, if she's going to be as harsh as he was repressing protests, for example, if they erupt. That is not a key element right now among the people I've talked to. They're not even talking about Maria Corina Machado anymore. People in lines are talking about how much water do we need if another strike comes. What should I do? Should I get refuge? Should I seek shelter? Should I get my family? Should I travel? And then this intensifies after defense minister just ordered basically Venezuela to get back to normal immediately. And people wonder, how are we going to get back to normal after experiencing such a day as Saturday? Starting with bombing the capital city of Caracas, ending with Nicolás Maduro on handcuffs. An image that keeps being present in everyone's mind, at least here on the ground. So I think there's a little bit of confusion because you would expect people, here to wonder and talk about who's next. And if Delcy is going to be the president for how long, or elections even, right? But that is not the case. And I think the citizens of the people here are still in a state of shock. And I think it's going to take a little bit of time to get out of that.
Just briefly, Ana, because what you're describing, it does seem to make sense that the immediate need of people is their livelihood, is their food, their water, their shelter, those basic needs that have to be fulfilled before they can talk about kind of the next element, the next layer politically of things. Would you say then, Ana, that people are in any sense getting the answers that they're looking for when it comes to those questions of basic necessities?
Well, yes and no. I mean, we have not seen lootings or chaos in the streets. We are not seeing people or pharmacies or supermarkets without any products on the shelves. I mean, this is not a scenario like the ones we saw back in 2016 when people couldn't find anything to survive. This is different. The supermarkets are still stuck, but people do wonder if this is going to become a major humanitarian crisis. And if that is the case, then what is next? So people, for example, a woman today, while she was buying some stuff, she said, if another strike happens, then what about the transportation of food from one place to the other in the country? I mean, things are going to get more expensive. It's going to be harder to get food, to get water. So she was basically buying anything she could. And still, she could find stuff.
Okay. Ana Vanessa Herrera, we're so glad to have you on the ground there in Venezuela. Thank you for your continued reporting under what I know are tough circumstances for you and those around you. Really appreciate your time. Let's bring it back here to home now, because potentially as soon as tomorrow, so less than 24 hours from now, we could see Nicolas Maduro and his wife make their first court appearance in New York City. We showed you that detention center where he's being held now in Brooklyn. He's facing multiple criminal charges here in the U.S. Narco-terrorism conspiracy, the importation of a whole lot of cocaine, conspiracy on that front, multiple gun charges as well. You can see them here all laid out in that sweeping indictment that accuses Maduro of essentially partnering with cartels to initiate this massive drug trafficking conspiracy. I want to bring in for more our Chief Justice and National Affairs correspondent, Kelly O'Donnell. So with that stage set, Kelly, for tomorrow, we saw action for almost 18 hours straight yesterday. The capture, the attack on Venezuela, the capture of Maduro, his extraction back to the United States, him landing at that airport in New York, choppering to New York City, all of that. Today, he is behind closed doors. Tomorrow, that may change.
So really, you set that up in a beautiful way, because the extraordinary cinematic events that were high stakes and high danger that led to his arrest and capture will now be followed by a far more predictable process inside the United States justice system. A figure of the world notoriety, such as Maduro, certainly will continue to draw a great deal of attention to that holding facility in New York, which has a very negative history of being dangerous and not well maintained, but poor conditions for those that are there. So that's its own story. And certainly security around Maduro will be significantly important, because there have been many instances of violence in that facility. Again, he's high profile. They are accustomed to high profile detainees. And that is certainly the case with Maduro and his wife. A 25-page indictment has been returned. And that is part of what you have here. You outline the four major charges. Now it becomes a part of a much more predictable justice system, where the United States will try to, through the court system, hold Maduro and his wife accountable. There are others who are named in this indictment who have not been captured inside Venezuela, and we don't yet know what will happen with them, including some members of the government. The overarching theme here is that Maduro was interacting with the drug cartels to profit, to line his pockets and those in his regime by clearing the way for the kind of drug running, and that included guns and obviously extensive trafficking of drugs and other kinds of crimes related to that. And the government will have to now prove that case. This is the second indictment. There was one in 2020 as well. This one has been updated to include some additional specifics about his wife, who was a formidable person in the government as well, not just the spouse, but had her own career in the government. So tomorrow we expect potentially the first appearance. He's not required to put in a plea, but it just begins what will be a very long process that, of course, holds very serious penalties for Maduro and his wife.
And Kelly, can you help us understand just nuts and bolts, getting granular here? In it, you talk about the procedural process that will now play out in many ways predictably. Does that mean Nicolas Maduro is going to get a defense attorney, right? Do we know who that person may be? I assume it will be somebody who's publicly appointed at first, but I don't know, Kel.
Well, we're waiting to find out who that is, and that's part of the process. So there's a time clock running on since his detention to his first appearance. So that sort of fuels the need to get this going. Of course, tomorrow's the first day back in sort of regular business post-holidays. So that leads itself to being what you would expect the government to be ready for this. This indictment was sealed, but it happened earlier, so prosecutors are prepared with next steps. It is an interesting question about counsel, because, of course, he's had access to immense resources in his role for which he's being charged, and then he's got to have counsel that is licensed in New York. So we'll have to see what happens with that. But there will be a team of prosecutors, and certainly going up against the Department of Justice is always formidable for any defendant, and this one being so high profile. So among the questions will be, will his counsel challenge the way he was detained? So many things like that will be issues that will play out in the days and weeks to come.
Kelly O'Donnell watching all of it for us. Kel, thank you very much. I want to go now. I think we have Misty Maris, our NBC News legal analyst, who is joining us now. I'm just checking in to see if we have her. We do. Misty, to the point that Kelly is making here, the idea that Maduro may challenge the way that he was brought to the United States to face these charges laid out in this indictment. Is that typically a tactic that tends to be successful? I even hesitate to use the word typically because everything that has happened up to this point has been very atypical. You don't typically see a defendant pulled in a massive military operation from another country that they had previously been leading.
Yeah, absolutely. Nothing routine about this one, but I would expect those challenges to the way that Maduro and his wife were brought to the United States. I would expect challenges trying to get this thrown out at the outset, citing violations of international law, violations of due process, and what we call head of state immunity. So I think those would be the likely challenges that will happen once he does retain counsel. And there was an interesting discussion with Kelly. We don't know whether or not a lawyer has either been appointed or whether or not they have retained counsel. But I would think that this is the type of case that would attract some of the most high profile constitutional lawyers and minds because of these issues and just the breadth of issues that will come with challenging these indictments.
Misty Maris, plenty to watch. I'm sure we'll talk again tomorrow. Misty, thank you. I appreciate that. I got to get to some breaking news now because there is a new interview, new comments from President Trump just out now in an interview that he gave to The Atlantic, obviously that outlet that covers a variety of news, including, of course, foreign news, that spoke with President Trump apparently today. This is just published. And in it, President Trump appears to threaten the current Venezuelan vice president, the interim president, Delcy Rodriguez, who we just talked about, with what he describes as a price bigger than what Nicolas Maduro paid. I want to go to our chief international correspondent, Keir Simmons, who's joining us now. Keir, this is just dropped. So this is, we're in kind of developing rolling coverage right here. But looking at some of these comments from President Trump, he is sort of clearly defiant about this strike. He is also talking about Venezuelan leadership. And I want to read the quote here. I think our team has made it, saying that if she doesn't do what's right, Delcy Rodriguez, this is, she is going to pay a very big price, probably bigger than Maduro, who is obviously sitting in that detention center in Brooklyn right now. You see the quote here. And Keir, this is part of the question that is on the minds of so many people around the world who are watching this, which is what happens to Venezuela next?
That's right. And we were talking yesterday, weren't we, Halle, about the question of where is and what has happened to Delcy Rodriguez, what is her role going to be, and was a deal done between the Trump administration and Rodriguez? Now, just remember, this is a woman who was vice president under Maduro for many years, since 2018. She is now the interim president, according to Venezuelan authorities. If she's not now, she's being inducted into that position in the coming hours. And so she has kind of dyed in the wool Maduro, if you like, and yet what we had was President Trump suggesting at his news conference yesterday that there was a deal with her. Now, we heard from the Secretary Rubio this morning on Meet the Press, and you played some of that and spoke to Kristen about it in that great interview. What he was asked about Delcy Rodriguez, and he didn't answer exactly what he did suggest, and I'm paraphrasing here, I don't have the quotes in front of me, but what he did suggest was that this was all about ensuring that the leadership in Venezuela acts more in the interests of the United States. So there now does appear to be a question mark because, President Trump, speaking to The Atlantic, may simply have just been riffing, or it may be an indication that they aren't entirely certain which way Delcy Rodriguez is going to go, and that they feel like they need to put more pressure on her. Now, she is, as I mentioned, she is somebody who's worked closely with Maduro. Her brother has been also serving in the Maduro regime. Her father was a very left-wing firebrand, and so she's of that heritage. She's of that politics, if you like. It will be stunning if she shifts, but that is apparently what the Trump administration has been looking for. And all of this goes to that question of what now? That is the real question here. Listen, I think you've been talking about it, Halle, on the show, about potential comparisons to Iraq. Let's be clear, this is not Iraq. At the peak, America had 170,000 troops in Iraq. We talked yesterday, didn't we, about potential comparisons to the Bush operation in Panama in 1989. This is not that either. Panama is smaller, and America had a lot of infrastructure actually around Panama already. Venezuela is much bigger, and there's this fundamental question of how, particularly if it's going to be try to be done remotely, if you like, how is the Trump administration going to get what it wants in Venezuela now that it has carried out this regime change?
Okay, a couple of things here, Keir, as we're sort of looking at this interview. Again, new from President Trump. We heard from him yesterday in that news conference at Mar-a-Lago. This is from today. The Atlantic says it is from this morning. So a couple of things. You mentioned Iraq. He was asked about this by Michael Scherer, the correspondent here, who said, why nation building and regime change in Venezuela is different or would be different than Iraq, to your point about the comparison. And this is what President Trump responded. He said, I didn't do Iraq. That was Bush. You'll have to ask Bush that question because we should have never gone into Iraq. That started the Middle East disaster. All of that said, the president is also making clear in this interview that he is having a different, let's say, filter or perspective on the idea of regime change than perhaps the one that he ran on initially, where he talked about no new wars, no protracted foreign entanglement by America into other countries here. Talking about, and I'm looking for this quote here, the idea basically that it couldn't be worse. He said, rebuilding is not a bad thing in Venezuela's case. He said, the country's gone to hell. He goes on to say it's a country that's a disaster in every way. And then, Keir, he alludes to potentially Greenland being next. This is something that he sort of toyed with or talked about for a while. It's seen in some corners as perhaps, a troll, more serious in the eyes of others. But the president is suggesting here that after what happened in Venezuela, he said, we do need Greenland. We need it for defense. That he wasn't referring to Greenland at the time when he talked about further U.S. military action, but clearly is not ruling that out either, Keir.
Yeah, that's right. Well, that's what he says. The president was asked yesterday at that news conference whether he would be prepared to send boots on the ground into Venezuela. And he said, I'm not afraid of boots on the ground. And what Secretary Rubio said about that, and I'm paraphrasing just this morning on Meet the Press, was, well, of course, President Trump is going to keep his options open. So he's going to say a lot of things. Maybe you want to put the Greenland comments in that bracket. Maybe, but certainly what we do know is that there is a shift in policy by the Trump administration towards focusing on the Western Hemisphere, focusing on America's region, if you like, and that's where the Trump administration is talking about this Venezuela operation as fitting in. So I think, look, I think that these comments from President Trump, in broad terms, kind of wide aperture, need to be viewed as an indication that the roll of the dice, effectively, that the Trump administration has done with Venezuela, that we still don't really know how those dice are going to fall, and we've got days and weeks and months of this ahead.
Keir Simmons. Keir, I'm going to ask you to stand by. I know you're still sifting through that new interview from President Trump. Julie Sturkin's been doing that as well from Mar-a-Lago. You mentioned, as we talked not even 30 minutes ago, Julie, President Trump has spent the morning at the golf course as he is South Florida, clearly had some time to get on the phone with this reporter, Michael Scherer from The Atlantic, and talk through sort of what he sees the landscape as Venezuela in next.
Exactly, Hallie. And we also talked about a little moment ago that the president yesterday did not take off the table potential action against other governments and other countries. I mentioned Cuba and Mexico. Well, as you and Keir have been talking about, what about Greenland and Denmark, of course, part of that country? And yesterday, I also noticed, just as I'm reading through this Atlantic interview, which the president essentially says we'll have to see what happens in Greenland, basically saying that whatever Secretary of State Rubio meant yesterday by other countries, governments having to watch out, other presidents being on notice. He doesn't elaborate on what Rubio said yesterday, but he did say in part saying we do need Greenland. Absolutely. He described the island, of course, which is part of Denmark, a NATO ally, a NATO member, surrounded by Russia and Chinese ships. And that is why he's saying the U.S. has to have a presence there. This isn't the first time he's said this. He's been sort of toying with this idea, threatening, sending a warning about Canada in the beginning of his administration, becoming the 51st state, about Greenland as well. Allies have sort of maybe taken this seriously, but mostly snubbed their shoulders at it. Even Republicans on Capitol Hill that I talked to had the same reaction. But if you're reading into what Secretary of State Rubio said yesterday, which is take the president at his word, I think now these governments, certainly after Venezuela, are paying attention. The other thing that I thought was interesting from this interview with The Atlantic is his comments about Delcy Rodriguez, who is the vice president of Venezuela. Now she is the leader since Maduro was taken out of that country. Yesterday, I was in that room when President Trump said multiple times that Secretary of State Rubio is in touch with Rodriguez, that she has been cooperating, that at least behind the scenes, she's been back channeling to the U.S. government that she wants to work with it. But that is not what she said herself hours later, since the president made those comments. And in this interview, the president responding to Rodriguez's defiant tone, calling on Maduro and his wife to be returned, saying that he is the only president of Venezuela. Well, the president now to the Atlantic said, if she doesn't do what's right, she is going to pay a very big price, probably bigger than Maduro, is what the president said. And we know that he also said there would be troops on the ground potentially unless Rodriguez does what the U.S. wants her to do. Hallie?
I think picking up on that, Julie, is critical because what this does is set up the potential for real conflict now between Delcy Rodriguez and President Trump. 24 hours ago, when we were looking at what the president had said after that news conference in Mar-a-Lago, he had suggested, as you point out, that there was some degree of perhaps alignment between U.S. leaders and the remaining leadership in Venezuela. Almost immediately, within several hours, it became clear that that was not the case with that defiant tone from Delcy Rodriguez. And now this equally defiant response from President Trump, threatening, it sounds like similar or same or more intense action against her, Julie.
It's hard to imagine what could be more intense than coming in the middle of the night in Caracas, in the capital of the city, and snatching you essentially from your bed, which is what happened to Maduro, and bringing him under the cover of night on a U.S. ship on multiple planes to New York, where he is essentially went from the palace to the perp walk as the president and his team had posted all of those videos. I can't imagine what would be worse that could happen to Delcy Rodriguez. But we also know that President Trump yesterday said they were planning a potential second phase that he said was even greater and even more escalatory than the operation that we saw overnight on Friday. He said that yesterday. Perhaps this is what he's referring to. We also know, Hallie, in just covering the president and watching his remarks in his first administration, in his second administration now, that he tends to deploy this kind of strategy. We saw it with Vladimir Putin last Sunday, where he stood side by side next to Ukrainian leader Zelensky, and he essentially said that President Putin is ready for peace, that he's open to it, that he's never seen him so interested. And then hours later, we saw the Russians try to blame an attack on Putin's residence on Ukraine that was flagged as a false flag operation by the U.S. So it seems like the president has tried to will foreign leaders to do what he wants them to do, whether they are committed to that mission or not. And that is, I suspect, what is happening here in the case of Delcy Rodriguez, but certainly the president today taking a defiant tone. And we know, according to Secretary of State Rubio this morning with Kristen Welker, that there is a military presence there, that they are watching this region closely, and according to the president, that the U.S. will now temporarily run that country. Hallie?
Clearly, President Trump this afternoon, ratcheting up the pressure on Delcy Rodriguez, the vice president, currently interim president of Venezuela. Julie, thank you. We've got a lot going on here in the last couple of minutes. A couple of things. First, some new video that is just into us now. Images that we haven't been able to show you before of the capture of Maduro. He is being surrounded by law enforcement. This is when he was being unloaded from this armored vehicle at DEA offices. This is it. And you see Maduro here. Again, this is from last night, late last night. And I believe that is his, from previous pictures, his wife, Celia Flores. But here he comes out. You see he's moving slowly, being pulled out of the back of that vehicle there. And again, this has just been cleared to us here for use to air here at NBC News. As we're seeing this, we are also hearing from Attorney General Pam Bondi, the DOJ. We're also hearing a joint statement now from several of the country's law enforcement agencies. And I want to bring in Kelly O'Donnell and our legal analyst, Misty Maris, for more on that. And Kelly, it's a new online post, and I think it's a paper statement, too, from the DOJ and from the Attorney General, making clear a couple of things. First, that this was, as we heard yesterday, a law enforcement operation, but also, and you see it here, that the Department of War took the lead on the mission. The Attorney General goes on to say that the U.S. pursued every lawful option to try to resolve this matter peacefully. Those opportunities were repeatedly rejected. What is the Attorney General trying to do here, Kelly? Is this about laying out ahead of these court appearances tomorrow, potentially, a baseline on the legal justification?
Well, it is notable because a statement statement of this length is not an everyday kind of tweet from the Department of Justice. And this statement, which was posted by the Attorney General, the FBI Director, and so forth, is several paragraphs long. And it does seem to be addressing questions that have been in the public space since this operation took place, in part because there are questions of legality and issues about notification to Congress, which typically would happen with military type actions. It did not happen until after the mission was underway, and there are questions about that. So by calling it law enforcement, that puts it under the heading of the Department of Justice and the Attorney General. But obviously, she is saying they could not execute this apprehension of fugitives without the Department of Defense, which this administration calls the Department of War. So part of what you see here is a laying out of their justifications. And again, that's somewhat unusual from this administration, but it does, I think, demonstrate there are pressing questions and a need for greater clarity. Typically, if you have one branch that is in the lead, they would have all of the authorities. And we would expect in this case that it was the military. There was an amassing of military assets for weeks. We certainly understood that Maduro and Flores, his wife, had been under indictment for a long time. And so she is really arguing that there were no other options, that they needed to try to apprehend these fugitives, and to do so required the military. It is notable that the people on either side of Maduro, who I don't know about you, but I was struck by his height. I had never realized what a tall man he is. They have DEA jackets, so they are part of the Department of Justice. And so we definitely saw military in the surroundings, but DOJ agency personnel at the elbow, if you will, both figuratively and literally, of Maduro and Flores in this operation. So clearly, before they get to court, they're trying to lay out some of the authorities, the justification, the thinking behind this. And that is part of what is so notable. Obviously, they go on to thank the Department of Defense, as we would call it, the Department of War, as this administration calls it. But the sense that there was no other option is going to be a contested matter. And you certainly also heard the Secretary of State saying today that he's been under indictment, and there are others around the world who are noted figures of various types who have not been secured by the United States. And this administration says, well, it's President Trump being a person of action that they decided to do this. They talk about the months of planning, the specialized teams. There's just so much more to dig in there. Part of that raises questions. What were the authorities? What were the resources in terms of the streams of federal funding to bring about this mission? Where did all of that come from? You can put in one sort of bucket, praise for the military operation that went off, executed well, and still have lots of questions about who authorized this, how was it authorized, what are the legal mechanisms for this to happen. And that's part of what it appears the Attorney General and the others in this multi-agency operation are trying to explain.
Kelly O'Donnell, juggling quite a bit this afternoon. What is a busy Sunday for you? Thank you. Let me bring back in Misty Maris, our legal analyst. How do you read this from the Department of Justice, Misty, based on what Kelly just laid out?
I agree with Kelly, and I actually think it's getting ahead of a specific argument that the Department of Justice is forecasting the defense will make. Some of those threshold arguments we were talking about before, Hallie, to challenge this indictment, challenge the way this arrest happened. Part of that is going to be whether or not this is a prosecution, as Pam Bondi has said in this tweet, for a large-scale drug trafficking operation. Basically, there's an indictment that they're bringing the Maduro and his wife to justice to prosecute them for their private criminal acts, versus some kind of pretext to actually enact a regime change. And I think some of what President Trump has been saying publicly will be what the Maduro's attorney, when they do have an attorney, will raise as far as the legality of whether or not they should enjoy immunity based on the head of state status. So this is attacking, to me, a very specific legal argument that now Pam Bondi and the Department of Justice is laying out to refocus this on the fact that this is a criminal prosecution for acts that have impacted the United States.
The other piece of this too, and I wonder the interplay of this. When you looked at there were questions around even before this extraction, this strike on Venezuela to remove Maduro. There had been questions around the legality of those boat strikes in the Caribbean, as you well know, Misty. And just to remind people, these are the strikes that have been going on for months now that have killed more than 100 alleged narco-terrorists. The administration says more than 100 people. These strikes, they released a video of them. We see it, sort of that night vision looking video, and questions about whether that was legal. The Justice Department, apparently, according to some Washington Post reporting, had suggested that there was legality to that because of a long-standing, or because of an Office of Legal Counsel, OLC, basically, memo that laid this out. Help us understand the interplay between the Justice Department, Congress, the courts here in this situation, and how that works together.
Absolutely. So there's basically, when you're talking about an act of war, that requires congressional approval. It would fall outside the president's executive Article 2 powers. So the argument is that to bomb these boats or to go in and facilitate a regime change would require congressional approval. There's a 1989 memo at Department of Justice, as you just said, actually written by Bill Barr, which says that the United States has inherent constitutional authority to order the FBI to take people into custody in a foreign nation, even if it would violate international law. And federal courts have held that that the manner in which a defendant is brought before a U.S. court can still mean that there is jurisdiction, even if it's outside of U.S. soil, and even if it is by force. So all of this interplays together into arguments that I would expect to see about whether or not congressional approval was needed under this circumstance, or does it fall under the president's Article 2 powers relating to issues of foreign intelligence or relating to other diplomatic type issues. So that is the push-pull that we're going to see. And it's a familiar argument, this tension between what is congressional versus what falls under the president's domain.
Misty Meris, we're glad to have you with us today, breaking all this down. Appreciate that. I want to bring in now our senior national security correspondent, Courtney Kube, who's been all over this now since the moment this strike began overnight Friday into Saturday morning. And Court, when you look at this is obviously the Department of Defense was primarily involved in so much of this, along with the intelligence community from our reporting and our understanding. And yet you have Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, and others who have suggested multiple times
Tonight, breaking news, the stunning capture of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, now behind bars in the U.S., set to face charges in court in New York City, 24 hours after the president said the U.S. would run Venezuela. President Nicolas Maduro and his wife handcuffed as they arrived in New York City. Maduro showing 2 thumbs up, wishing federal agents Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Maduro is expected in court tomorrow to answer narco-terrorism charges. New details emerging about the extraordinary U.S. military operation to extract Maduro from his safe house inside a heavily fortified military installation. 150 U.S. aircraft taking off from 20 locations, extraction teams flying less than 100 feet above the surface. A covert CIA team on the ground tracking Maduro's every move. And President Trump's new threat to Venezuela's vice president, saying she will pay a very big price if she does not cooperate. Martha Raddatz with the latest reporting. 24 hours after President Trump claimed the U.S. would now run Venezuela, what the administration is now saying tonight. The president, who campaigned on getting America out of foreign wars, now says he will not rule out American boots on the ground in Venezuela. Tonight, the scene inside Venezuela, a mix of celebration and fear over the country's future. Many relieved Maduro is gone, but asking what comes next. And tonight, the human toll from the U.S. operation. James Longman at the border with Venezuela. Tonight, President Trump's focus on Venezuela's oil reserves, the largest in the world. The president says U.S. oil companies will rebuild Venezuela's oil infrastructure. What happens to the oil in the meantime, with Russia and China getting oil from Venezuela? Major airlines are now scrambling to get back on schedule after flights were canceled in the Caribbean, stranding thousands of travelers. World News Tonight begins now.
From
ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight.
For joining us on this busy Sunday night. We begin with breaking news making global headlines. America's precision operation to capture Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and his wife, bringing them to the U.S. to face charges in an American court. Maduro and First Lady Celia Flores arriving in New York in handcuffs. Both are expected to make their first court appearance tomorrow. The couple is now being held separately at the same notorious jail in Brooklyn that housed Ghislaine Maxwell, Sean Combs, and El Chapo, along with Luigi Mangione. Maduro giving two thumbs up as he was being escorted by federal agents. Remarkable new details are emerging about the U.S. military operation to extract Maduro from his safe house inside a heavily fortified military installation. The plan, months in the making, involving 150 aircraft, extraction teams flying less than 100 feet above the surface, and a covert CIA team on the ground tracking Maduro. President Trump says the U.S. will now run Venezuela. And 24 hours after saying Venezuela's vice president was cooperating with the U.S., why Trump's now threatening that she will, quote, pay a very big price if she does not. New images emerging from inside Venezuela. Maduro supporters in the streets condemning the U.S. and demanding the return of their president. Tonight, lawmakers from both parties are calling for a briefing from the White House. Many are upset Congress was not notified before any military action was taken. Our team is standing by. ABC's chief global affairs correspondent Martha Raddatz leads us off.
Tonight, remarkable new video showing the moment ousted Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and his wife arrived in New York, facing federal narco-terrorism charges. The once defiant leader in handcuffs, surrounded by federal agents, wishing everyone Happy New Year in video shared by the administration.
Happy New Year.
Maduro seized in a bold and dangerous military operation using the Army's elite Delta Force to remove him from power, with President Trump claiming the U.S. has now taken over Venezuela.
We're going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition.
But questions tonight over who is really in control after Maduro's handpicked vice president, Delcy Rodriguez, was sworn in as the nation's acting president and blasted the U.S. intervention, saying Maduro was abducted. President Trump, after initially signaling Rodriguez might be cooperative, today issuing a new threat, saying if she doesn't do what's right, she is going to pay a very big price, probably bigger than Maduro. Venezuela's defense minister also defiant, saying the military stands united in the face of imperial aggression and Venezuelan lives were lost. And tonight, we're learning more about that extraordinary U.S. military and law enforcement raid to capture Maduro. The elite Delta Force had built an exact replica of Maduro's safe house inside a heavily fortified military installation, practicing the raid for months. And a covert CIA team on the ground was tracking Maduro's every move, where he slept, what he ate, even the pets he has. President Trump giving the green light for Operation Absolute Resolve at 10:46 Friday night.
The weather broke just enough, clearing a path that only the most skilled aviators in the world could maneuver through. Ocean, mountain, low cloud ceilings.
More than 150 U.S. military warplanes, fighter jets, bombers, launching from 20 different bases and ships. Videos online showing explosions lighting the night sky over Caracas as U.S. warplanes targeted air defenses and military bases. Gunfire heard as low-flying aircraft struck multiple facilities. Then, nearly a dozen U.S. Special Operations helicopters roaring through the night, swooping in, carrying the extraction team, flying barely 100 feet over the dark water. Those helicopters arriving at Maduro's compound around 1:01 Saturday morning in the dead of night.
On arrival into the target area, the helicopters came under fire, and they replied with that fire with overwhelming force in self-defense. One of our aircraft was hit, but remained flyable.
The special operations forces moving in just as Maduro headed for a safe room, grabbing him and his wife moments before they could close a steel door behind them.
He was trying to get into a safe place. You know what a safe place is, all steel. And he wasn't able to make it to the door because our guys were so fast.
The operation lasting roughly 2.5 hours over Venezuela with only minor injuries to U.S. personnel. President Trump posting this image of Maduro on board the USS Iwo Jima, handcuffed and blindfolded. And tonight, with Maduro now in U.S. custody, serious questions about how the U.S. plans to control oil-rich Venezuela until, in the president's words, there can be a proper judicious transition. And Lindsay, that is the big question. What next in Venezuela and who will remain in charge? President Trump saying he's not afraid of boots on the ground, but insisting Venezuela's oil would be a priority. Lindsay?
A number of questions there, Martha. Thank you. 24 hours after President Trump declared the U.S. would now run Venezuela, what the administration is now saying. Secretary of State Marco Rubio suggests the U.S. will push for government changes through oil blockades, and what President Trump is signaling about possible American boots on the ground in Venezuela. Here's ABC's Rachel Scott.
24 hours after President Trump declared the U.S. would run Venezuela, a country of 31 million people, tonight it's still unclear how that will happen, what it will look like, and who will be in charge. The president was blunt.
We're going to run the country right. It's going to be run very judiciously, very fairly. It's going to make a lot of money.
But today, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, an architect of the plan, seeming to dial back the U.S. role.
Is the United States running Venezuela right now?
What we are running is the direction that this is going to move moving forward. And that is we have leverage. This leverage we are using and we intend to use. We started using already.
Rubio implying the U.S. would simply pressure the current Venezuelan government with a military blockade to, quote, quarantine oil leaving the country. That's a departure from what the president said, that Rubio, along with Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, would actually run the nation themselves.
What's the group you mentioned that would run Venezuela?
It's largely going to be, for a period of time, the people that are standing right behind me. We're going to be running it. We're going to be bringing it back.
Today, Rubio hedged on just who was in charge.
Is it you? Is it Secretary Hegseth? Who are those people who will be running the country specifically?
Well, it's not running, it's running policy. The policy with regards to this. We want Venezuela to move in a certain direction.
Democrats accuse the president of leading America into another U.S.-led regime change, like the war in Iraq, a move President Trump himself has long criticized.
We have learned through the years when America tries to do regime change and nation building in this way, the American people pay the price in both blood and in dollars.
The president, who campaigned on a pledge to get America out of foreign wars, now says he won't rule out sending American troops to Venezuela.
We're not afraid of boots on the ground.
The president spoke over the country's oil and his intention to send U.S. oil companies in, while also saying the mission is to crack down on drug trafficking. But tonight, one Republican critic, Congressman Thomas Massie, posting, "Wake up, MAGA. Venezuela is not about drugs. It's about oil and regime change. This is not what we voted for." The congressman warning lives of U.S. soldiers are being risked to make oil companies, not Americans, more profitable.
And Lindsay, there are still a lot of questions tonight. The president says the U.S. is going to run Venezuela, but the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, did not go that far. He did insist the U.S. is not at war with Venezuela, Lindsay.
Rachel Scott from the White House for us. Thank you, Rachel. Here in New York City, extremely tight security will be in place when Nicolas Maduro and his wife make their first scheduled appearance in federal court in Lower Manhattan tomorrow. Maduro and his wife are being held separately at the same notorious jail used for Ghislaine Maxwell, Sean Combs, El Chapo, and Luigi Mangione. ABC's Whit Johnson is outside the facility in Brooklyn.
Tonight, Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro and his wife Celia Flores are behind bars inside this notorious federal jail in Brooklyn, known for its poor conditions and high-profile inmates. The Metropolitan Detention Center, once home to drug lord El Chapo, Ghislaine Maxwell, Sean Diddy Combs, and currently accused killer Luigi Mangione. Tomorrow, the ousted Venezuelan president will be transported to the federal courthouse in Lower Manhattan to face charges. Federal prosecutors laying out their case in this new 4-count indictment, alleging Maduro was at the forefront of a narco-terrorism conspiracy to transport thousands of tons of cocaine into the U.S.
People should read this indictment. They should read what this man did for the last 15 years of his life against the United States, him and his wife.
Maduro allegedly sold Venezuelan diplomatic passports to individuals he knew were drug traffickers seeking to move drug proceeds using private planes under diplomatic cover. The indictment highlighting Maduro's wife, Celia Flores, as a key player in the corruption, alleging she accepted hundreds of thousands of dollars in bribes. The government says the couple maintained state-sponsored gangs and ordered kidnappings, beatings, and murders against those who owed them drug money or undermined their operation. Maduro has long denied drug trafficking. In a final interview on state TV 2 days before his capture, he said the U.S. government knows that if they want to seriously discuss an agreement to combat drug trafficking, we're ready. But by that time, U.S. forces were already poised to seize Maduro, just waiting for the right conditions and the order from President Trump. And the Maduros are both scheduled to make their initial court appearances in the same courtroom tomorrow. Maduro's 35-year-old son is also named in the indictment, but sources tell ABC News he is not in U.S. custody. Lindsay.
Whit Johnson for us. Thank you. Now to the images inside Venezuela. A mix of celebration and fear over the country's future. Many expressing relief Maduro is gone, others condemning the operation. ABC's chief international correspondent James Longman is at the border with Venezuela.
Tonight, the world reacting to America's stunning operation in Venezuela. A number of people were killed in the U.S. strikes that accompanied Maduro's capture. This apartment building right next to a military complex, although the government won't confirm the number of dead. The defense minister still defiant, saying today it was against Venezuela, tomorrow it could be against any state or any country. But after the celebration in the streets at the fall of an autocrat, millions wonder, what now? This is Cúcuta on the Colombian side of the border, and that there is Venezuela. And in normal times, tens of thousands of Venezuelans cross this border to buy goods here that they can't get back home. Now, though, it's a path perhaps to a new future for the millions of people who've been forced into exile. We meet nervous faces like Jose Luis and his mother. You get the sense that people don't really know how to feel. Happy that Maduro's gone, but they have no idea what's going to happen next. We meet Sol.
When
I heard the news about Maduro, I started crying with joy, she says. I have family in exile. Maybe they can come home. She shows us her groceries, cheaper here than in Venezuela. Sol is hoping that in the future, she won't have to come to Colombia to get her shopping. And it's a busy night tonight, Lindsay, on the bridge to Venezuela. Happiness, the overwhelming emotion we encountered about the end of Maduro, but for many of Venezuela's neighbors, they are still officially condemning the operation. Big questions about what will happen next. Lindsay.
Lots of mixed emotions there, James. Thank you. Now to the U.S. takeover of Venezuela's oil industry. President Trump is aiming to tap into that country's vast oil reserves, the largest in the world. ABC's Matt Rivers reports from Bogota, Colombia.
With President Maduro out, President Trump wants American oil companies in, saying the runway is now clear for U.S. corporations to revitalize a, quote, badly broken oil industry they once dominated. But tonight, some questioning if that plan is realistic.
The oil companies are going to go in, they're going to spend money, we're going to take back the oil.
Venezuela, a key ally of Russia and China, sits on the largest supply of oil reserves worldwide, a supply U.S. companies tapped for decades. But after Venezuela nationalized its oil industry, output plummeted. Sanctions and decades of mismanagement meant that the country now accounts for just 1% of global production. But so far, some American oil companies like ConocoPhillips and Chevron not overtly signing on to the president's plan.
The task alone is a massive one and would be a very expensive one for any company to undertake.
U.S. oil companies say they lost billions when they were forced out by Venezuela's government, leaving behind assets and lost profits. Trump says that will change.
We're in the oil business. We'll be selling oil, probably in much larger doses.
Now, right now, China is the largest buyer of Venezuelan oil. President Trump doesn't like that. Instead, he would rather see that oil sold within the United States or to other friendly countries. But bottom line, Lindsay, is that we are likely at least years away before we see a truly significant increase in Venezuelan oil production. Lindsay.
Matt Rivers reporting from Colombia. Thank you. Now to the major airlines scrambling to get back on track. Thousands of flyers stranded after flight cancellations and delays in the Caribbean. Here's ABC's Morgan Norwood.
Tonight, thousands of tourists stranded across the Caribbean after the military operation that captured Venezuela's Nicolas Maduro forced airlines to cancel hundreds of flights across the region. This Flight Radar 24 animation showing flights avoiding Venezuelan airspace yesterday after the FAA banned U.S. airlines from flying over Venezuela and portions of the Caribbean, citing ongoing military activity. Luis Muñoz Marin International Airport in San Juan seemed empty after the airstrikes. Reporter Nydia Hahn from our Philadelphia station WPVI says she and her family could be stuck for days.
Unfortunately, because of Maduro's capture and airspace being closed, we are stuck here in Vieques.
Overnight, those restrictions lifting, but now major airlines racing to get back on track, many handing out travel waivers. American Airlines adding nearly 5,000 extra seats to the region, deploying its Boeing 777, its largest plane. Southwest, United, and JetBlue also adding flights tonight.
And Lindsay, airlines are urging passengers to check their flight status before heading to the airport, warning that these flight schedules could remain fluid in the coming days. Lindsay?
Morgan, thank you. When we come back, tracking a fast-moving system, snow and ice moving across the Northeast, coastal flood alerts in the West, and the popular actress from Lost and the Marvel movies, which she's now revealing about her condition after a frightening fall. Next tonight, some dangerous weather. A clipper system bringing ice and snow from the Great Lakes to the Northeast through Monday. More rain is on the way in the West, possibly several inches, while Central California could get the images inside Venezuela, a mix of celebration and fear over the country's future. Many expressing relief Maduro is gone, others condemning the operation. ABC's chief international correspondent James Longman is at the border with Venezuela.
Tonight, the world reacting to America's stunning operation in Venezuela. A number of people were killed in the U.S. strikes that accompanied Maduro's capture. This apartment building right next to a military complex, although the government won't confirm the number of dead. The defense minister still defiant, saying today it was against Venezuela, tomorrow it could be against any state or any country. But after the celebration in the streets at the fall of an autocrat, millions wonder, what now? This is Cúcuta on the Colombian side of the border, and that there is Venezuela. And in normal times, tens of thousands of Venezuelans cross this border to buy goods here that they can't get back home. Now, though, it's a path perhaps to a new future for the millions of people who've been forced into exile. We meet nervous faces like Jose Luis and his mother. You get the sense that people don't really know how to feel. Happy that Maduro is gone, but they have no idea what's going to happen next. We meet Sol. When I heard the news about Maduro, I started crying with joy, she says. I have family in exile. Maybe they can come home. She shows us her groceries, cheaper here than in Venezuela. Sol is hoping that in the future, she won't have to come to Colombia to get her shopping. And it's a busy night tonight, Lindsay, on the bridge to Venezuela. Happiness, the overwhelming emotion we encountered about the end of Maduro, but for many of Venezuela's neighbors, they are still officially condemning the operation. Big questions about what will happen next. Lindsay?
Lots of mixed emotions there, James. Thank you. The images inside Venezuela, a mix of in New York City, extremely tight security will be in place when Nicolas Maduro and his wife make their first scheduled appearance in federal court in Lower Manhattan tomorrow. Maduro and his wife are being held separately at the same notorious jail used for Ghislaine Maxwell, Sean Combs, El Chapo, and Luigi Mangione. ABC's Whit John outside the facility in Brooklyn.
Tonight, Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro and his wife Celia Flores are behind bars inside this notorious federal jail in Brooklyn, known for its poor conditions and high-profile inmates. The Metropolitan Detention Center, once home to drug lord El Chapo, Ghislaine Maxwell, Sean Diddy Combs, and currently accused killer Luigi Mangione. Tomorrow, the ousted Venezuelan president will be transported to the federal courthouse in Lower Manhattan to face charges. Federal prosecutors laying out their case in this new 4-count indictment, alleging Maduro was at the forefront of a narco-terrorism conspiracy to transport thousands of tons of cocaine into the U.S.
People should read this indictment. They should read what this man did for the last 15 years of his life against the United States, him and his wife.
Maduro allegedly sold Venezuelan diplomatic passports to individuals he knew were drug traffickers seeking to move drug proceeds using private planes under diplomatic cover. The indictment highlighting Maduro's wife, Celia Flores, as a key player in the corruption, alleging she accepted hundreds of thousands of dollars in bribes. The government says the couple maintained state-sponsored gangs and ordered kidnappings, beatings, and murders against those who owed them drug money or undermined their operation. Maduro has long denied drug trafficking. In a final interview on state TV 2 days before his capture, he said the U.S. government knows that if they want to seriously discuss an agreement to combat drug trafficking, we're ready. But by that time, U.S. forces were already poised to seize Maduro, just waiting for the right conditions and the order from President Trump.
And the Maduros are both scheduled to make their initial court appearances in the same courtroom tomorrow. Maduro's 35-year-old son is also named in the indictment, but sources tell ABC News he is not in U.S. custody. Lindsay.
Whit Johnson for us. Thank you.
Whew. That was a lot, you guys. Hold on. So I think the people in Venezuela are happy. They sound happy to me. Let me read your comments before I get out of here. Are we still friends after all those videos? Bob, are we still friends? Okay, let me get to your comments. It's funny, as soon as they mentioned oil and Diddy, we got Cassie in it. Okay. Am I having audio issues? Can you guys hear me or no? Hold on. I could be. So, I'm going to say this. Y'all can hear me? Go to sleep? Yeah, what the hell? I'm going to say this, you guys. Donald Trump, now, no one complained when Biden also talked about dealing with Venezuela, but he never got it done. But no one complained about Biden talking about it. Donald Trump decides to go over there and handle Venezuela after negotiating with Maduro, and they couldn't reach an agreement. So the Americans did what the Americans needed to do, and they went over there and they handled business because it is about drug trafficking. If they happen to get oil on top of it, well, we know that Venezuela is very wealthy in oil. Okay, they have oil over there. But Donald Trump, they were cited for humanitarian reasons and the drug trafficking. Venezuela is not the only country that Donald Trump is going to come after. Was Diddy, or it's about the rule of the law. Exactly. I don't know about that. Where's the drugs? Oh. Okay. What did Bush say? I'm going to have to time her out. Where is she at? Hang on, you guys. I have something for you. Let me see if I can find it. You guys, stay respectful in the chat. I don't really care what you think I look like, okay? Don't care. Okay, now I won't show them. There's a lot going on, but what do you guys think about, it doesn't matter if I'm single, Venezuela is free. Venezuela is free. What'd you say? If it's if it's another political video, you're gonna lose a lot of friends. No, I was looking up some statistics, DJC. I'm not about to give you another video. No, there's tomorrow for that. Oh, I am about to give you guys a video, but it's short. I forgot I was sent this clip. Hold on. I'm gonna just show it from my phone. Hopefully you can see it. I don't know if you will because it's a short. Let me see if I can. Let me see.
We'll have full team coverage this morning.
I don't know if you guys will be able to see this.
And Mr. President, if you are declaring war against these
Let's watch
cartels
this. Hold on.
and
I'll start to see like
likely
this.
to approve of that process, why not just ask for a declaration of war?
Well, I don't think we're going to necessarily ask for a declaration of war. I think we're just going to kill people that are bringing drugs into our country. Okay, we're going to kill them. You know, they're going to be like dead. Okay.
So you guys heard it from Donald Trump. So I do think that this is about getting drugs out of our country that's killing, that's unaliving the American people. This ain't a political video. Whatever. I know that some people are saying that this is just about oil and we're trying to steal oil. I just think that's a plus on top of it. That's what I think. I can't see what comments are being blocked, so I'm going to assume that my mod is working overtime tonight, you guys. An international court about to be involved. It's deeper than that. Yeah, you guys, so I look like your ex, Mercy. I'm going to say this. Donald Trump is one of the hardest working presidents. Now, I'm not here to convince you guys to like Trump or vote for Donald Trump. I'm just here to share the news with you. And that was a very bold move to go into Venezuela. The president, Maduro, has to be embarrassed. But you know, the United States has taken a stand. Hopefully other countries will respect it. We can't go into their countries and sell drugs. We can't go over there and traffic drugs over there. We would probably get the death penalty. So I think that Donald Trump is doing what he needs to do for humanitarian purposes and to free the people over there, because Maduro is a dictator. So that's just what it is. What are your comments? There's no such thing as an international court. Okay, you can't be talking to me. You guys have any questions for me before I get out of here? Hopefully we're still friends after these videos. Russia broke in a Rob, you're fine. So Trump is here, you guys. I wonder how you share what news. You played a clip and flipped your phone. Bush baby, you're doing a lot of the chat, and honestly, after everything that you said yesterday, I think that we had our conversation. Okay. Let me get something legit to respond to. Imagine if they did this to you guys, would that be okay? Vanessa, if they did what to us? Take Donald Trump, you guys can't take our president. Always friends, Charles. Okay. We're still friends? Okay. Hardest working president. He is the hardest working president. The American people voted for Donald Trump to protect the borders. Donald Trump has been hardcore protecting our border. He got Tom Homan on the job, and Tom Homan is doing a fantastic job, in my opinion. And they're doing what they have to do. Now, there's pushback from Congress. You know, you have problems with state laws and things like that. But other than that, Donald Trump is cleaning up these cities, and crime rate is lower. Where Donald Trump sent those troops, the crime rate is lower. And we wanted men to be men, women to be women, not playing women's sports. And we wanted protected borders. We wanted America to just be a strong country with traditional values. And I said, now I know some other things come up, like the cost of groceries and things like that, but that's not what I'm talking about tonight. I am so interested in what's going to happen, and I'm going to follow this court case. He still has to be convicted. So we really don't know what's going to happen with the president. This is a big deal. You know, in the United States, I mean, you can't, arrest a sitting president. Whatever. So this is a really big deal. This is a strong message. But Donald Trump's like, no more drugs coming into this country, and that's just what he did. Appreciate the Chappelle reference, but you gotta go, my guy. Okay. Enjoy your stance. Just don't forget to combine. What do you mean? Hey, Claude. I'm in love with the news too. How about a sitting convicted felon? I have my judgment. I mean, a lot of those charges were to try to rig the election with Donald Trump. I don't listen to all the fake news surrounding him. He still won. Donald Trump has the biggest political comeback in history. So even though they tried to silence him, he came at the right time, and he's doing what he needs to do for our country. And now our country is better than ever. So I am not MAGA at all. Oh, shoot. Sorry. I am not MAGA at all, but I am here to speak the truth about what's going on in the country. And I know that makes some people upset. I know. He has 3 more years. Juicer, he does have 3 more years. How naive can I be? But lovely. Naive about naive about what? What am I naive about? So let me just tell you guys this. There was a border crisis. There was a problem at the border. And that's why Donald Trump won the popular vote and he won the electoral vote. Because saying that anybody can come into this country undocumented any kind of way was not good. It was not good for the people. It was not good for the economy. And it took a lot of rights away from Americans, well, a lot of finances and resources away from American people. And it just took a toll of the economy. And not only that, but the crime rate went high here. Now, I'm not talking about people that seek an asylum and people that are looking for refuge. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about people that come over here, commit crimes, and use our resources, and we have to take care of them instead of them coming into the country the right way, documented, because there are a lot of children being unaccounted for, trafficked, drugs are being trafficked into these countries, and the other countries were getting wealthy off of things like that. Donald Trump is working hard to even lower the cost of prescription drugs. And so that way, why should Americans pay more for the same prescription drugs that you can get in another country for much less? Soros has benefited this country. It will benefit this country. It's brought a lot of finances into this country. And I am going to keep watching. I'm going to keep supporting our president. And what do you guys say? Yes, Trump. Wait a minute. Let me see. Isn't the American government same as UK? Okay, I'm not sure. Human trafficking is still happening, but it's a start. Really? Okay. Bet your president is Trinidad. Friend, what are you saying? I lost the comment. Sorry. Crash, I have a lot of comments, so no one's a coward. I just can't see your comments. Crime rate is down. Not gonna lie, Trump is not good for the economy. How is he not? Trump will get his day. Trinidad, that's very un-American to say. What are you talking about? Trump is here, and he's here for 3 years, and he's here because the American people voted him in. And I'm just sharing what's happening in the news. Okay. Majority of those people talking about they were seeking asylum was lying. Maybe, but that's why they're still entitled to due process. I think that we have to stick together to protect free speech, to protect our constitutional rights. What happened to Charlie Kirk is a prime example of when the right speaks and says things that people don't like, and they're calling Tyler Robinson a hero. That goes to show, if you don't say what the left or what other people want you to say, then they think that they could take your life. So I'm ignoring a lot of comments with you guys. Like, some of the comments that are just rude and degrading, I just simply look over them and I continue to speak. I could never imagine this happening to our president in our country is in built like Venezuela. Right, damage, right? Oh, not sure what to believe anymore. Kerry Johnson, that's fair, but that's why I choose to just show you the clips and let you hear it from the horse's mouth, right? So if Donald Trump says something, you really don't hear me interpret it, I will just play the clip so you can hear it yourself. I try to show you both sides. So when we hear more from the Venezuelan president, I will play that, and you know, he's entitled to a defense. So I do understand that, you know, after a while, you're like, who to believe? So I always look for the source. Who will that be? There's no sitting convicted felon president. Okay. People are haters because we have freedom of speech. They don't believe in our Constitution. Now, what do you guys think about Marjorie Taylor Greene? I started off, now when Marjorie Taylor Greene was getting into it with Jasmine Crockett, I'm like, I felt like Jasmine was doing too much, but Marjorie did take a shot at her. I'm not going to talk about Jasmine Crockett right now. But Marjorie Taylor Greene has turned out to be very disappointing. She started out as a strong supporter, and now she's on some, I don't know. I kind of feel like she wants to run for Senate like Jasmine, but she's not bold enough to say so. Who knows what her agenda is? It's like we can't forget the stuff that she said. She can't even speak against Nick Fuentes and some of the stuff that he said. And I just think Marjorie is just doing a lot. The way that she turned on Donald Trump, I feel like she was going to do that in the beginning. And I just really don't understand her stance on things. I do not. You guys are saying that she's still Republican. I don't know. I kind of feel like she's a Republican in name only. That's just me. But what do you guys think about her? I know. Wait a minute. I know that MTG, what? Oh, darn. Is it bad built Trump? She's exactly who you thought she was. Jasmine Crockett is a queen. Okay. She's a backstabber. Exactly. Exactly. She is so disappointed in Marjorie. Man, at first I just thought, so Marjorie talked about the Epstein files. Let me tell y'all something. I am so sick of hearing about the Epstein files. Yes, I'm reading through it. Yes, I've been looking at it. But if Donald Trump had anything to do with those girls, that would have came out in the Biden, with the Biden administration. It just would have. So I'm not really buying her stance. I feel that Donald Trump was trying to stall it out a little bit because of everything else that was going on. I feel like the Epstein files coming out right now is to distract us from what's really happening in the world. Yes, if there are victims, which there are victims, then people need to answer to those crimes. I absolutely believe that 100%. But to try to pin it on the president because you want to tarnish his name and do even more damage than what was done before is absolutely insane. Because the victims deserve justice, but real justice. You're a Trump chick. How am I a Trump chick? I'm not a Trump chick. I'm just speaking that I'm for the commander-in-chief. Is that what you want to say? I can look through the lines. They wanted to, since they couldn't rig the election, okay, they couldn't. They tried to put a bunch of accusations on him, try to make it so that he couldn't run again, because what Donald Trump was doing was protecting our country. And the only reason why anybody would want illegal immigrants to come into this country and to give them all these resources that American citizens can't get is to pad the Democratic vote. Now, it's really hard to do these streams because I have to be so careful with what I say because of algorithm and all of that, right? I'm not trying to lose my channel talking about Donald Trump, but I am going to tell you that there was a reason why they, well, let me just stop there. I'm not going to say more. It's obvious that I'm slow. Really? Really? There's only one reason why all of a sudden they wanted it, so you didn't need IDs to vote. You didn't need, there's a lot of reasons. So anyway, Venezuela has been, yeah, I do have to be careful with what I say. So you guys are just gonna have to read between the lines a little bit. But think about it. Since when could you just vote without an ID? Why would they make it so? Why would they make it like that? So you can be anybody and just vote. Which way would they more than likely vote? Republican? I don't think so. Friend, you're spreading lies that have been debunked. Which lie did I spread? Don't believe that I've worked at poll sites and I said they were trying to pass that. And they didn't ask. No, I'm not lying. They didn't ask for my, let me think. They didn't ask for my ID when I voted. Trinagos, what are you talking about? I live in California. No, they did not ask for my ID. So you didn't work at the poll sites in every state. This is what happens when you go to a junior college and drop out. So you just assuming I went to a junior college, I went to college, I served my country, I went to the military. But I think that you can make your point without being disrespectful. And the moment you resort to insults means that you really don't have any facts to back up your point. Thank you, Tayson. I was in the Navy. Hey, Leon. Benny, thank you for your service. Thank you, Mr. Money. And I think that we have to really stick together, you guys, because there's going to be a lot of lies that's out there. When they refer to Republicans, they like to say that Republicans are Satan worshipers and all kinds of things. And it's only to dehumanize people that vote for the right. So that way, when something happens to them, like what happened to Charlie Kirk, that was so unfortunate, people will be like, oh, well, they deserve it. Nobody deserved that. But that's why you have the left and other people. And now this isn't a right against the left thing. Not at all, you guys. I have friends on both sides. But that's why you have, like, look at all the insults that's hurled at me. If I was saying things that were, that aligned with the left, you guys wouldn't be insulting me in the chat like that. So I just think that we have to be careful and really know what's going on. There's something wrong that if I do not go along with the Democratic Party, if I do not go along with what they're saying, then somehow I'm dumb, I'm outcast, and all these kind of things that you guys have been saying. But I'm going to continue to speak the truth, okay? I'm going to continue to do what's best for this country. I'm going to continue to serve my country, and I'm going to continue to play you guys the news and let you guys hear it for yourself, the unedited versions. Hi, can you say what your stance is? What my stance is on what? On what? Stop spreading. Which part is it miss? Oh, Jared, you're getting on my, you're really good to me. Try a diet vlog. Every stream y'all call me fat. It's okay. I'm kind of used to that. Sorry, you just joined me. Generally speaking, not sure if you're talking about Republicans or Trump or both. I was just sharing the news, Tiffany. I was talking about what happened in Venezuela and, just my stance on it. Stop going live. Don't tell me what to do. We love and respect your values. So her stance is truth as she brings proof. So what I do, you guys that are new to me, I'll show you a clip. I'll let you hear it for yourself, and then I'll speak on it. I don't give you guys my opinion. I don't tell you guys what to think. I'll let you hear for yourself. And then it's interesting, even as you're hearing this person speak and seeing these things that's happened, sometimes people still go against that. But I'm not here to persuade you guys of anything. Right now, what we have is the Venezuelan president captured. He's going to have a trial, and we'll watch the trial as I can play it. Fox News propaganda. I also played ABC and NBC, though, Cosmo. I didn't just play Fox. I played both. Okay, let me see what you're saying. Thank you, Neil. It wouldn't be an issue if it wasn't an administration telling your brothers and sisters in arms to break the law. What law did they tell them to break? I'm curious. Do you guys know how hard it is to even speak about subjects like this in front of you? That's how dedicated I am to just share information with you so we can have a conversation about it. And again, like, I'm not here to persuade you guys one way or another, but I am here to tell you guys the truth about stuff. And there is something wrong when you have a president telling you that open borders are okay. There is something wrong. That's not good for national security, and it's not safe for American people at all, which is kind of the same thing, but it's just not good. And trying to say that we should allow anyone to come over is why Harris lost the race. Okay? I think they knew that Biden wasn't going to win. They threw Harris in there, and what happened. Donald Trump won all swing states. Everybody rejected what they were trying to sell, and we're still rejecting it. Now, they may not say it publicly, but the numbers don't lie. Rob, go live. Rob, go live. Wayne, I'm trying to stay strong. Now, as a Black woman, I thought it was really important to say that some of us are on the right, and some of us don't like what's going on. And I did not speak about the right when Donald Trump came into office. If you look at any of my videos, I was speaking the same things before Donald Trump got into office. I really didn't like the direction that the country was going in. I didn't like what happened during the last election. I didn't like any of it. And I just believe in putting America first. We put America first. We strengthen our own economy. We take care of our own problems. Yeah, Charlie. We take care of our own problems within. I just love this country. That's why I went to the military. That's why I speak about things. I figured I have a platform. I used to talk about other stuff, and I said, I've mixed my commentary in, but the reason I've been hitting politics really hard is because of all the lies that's been coming from that's been coming towards the Republican Party. Oh, they're trying to keep the poor. No. The Republicans are the ones that fought for civil rights. The Republicans are the ones that fought for reparations and all the other things that people like to talk about. I'm not saying whether I agree or disagree. The Republican Party is not this demonic party that people are trying to make it seem like they're just a bunch of racists running around. There's racism everywhere on both sides. All right. So nobody is perfect. But what I am saying is overall, the traditional values and having strong families and strong communities, those things are important. It's really important to be, you have your family, to be part of a community and to be involved. Robbie, so Republicans have changed. I won't disagree with you there. I won't disagree with you. Traitor, goodness gracious. All right. Y'all have any other comments for me? Do you guys, are we still friends? Hi, Leslie. Republicans were the ones to shut down slavery. Yes, they were. Yes, they were. And the Democrats said that blacks were not ready. Now, had to do with labor, had to do with, they didn't see us as human, and Republicans came and fought. And let me tell you something, whites fought alongside blacks. Okay, white people lost their life for defending us for our rights. So I don't like to do the whole racial thing, and I won't do that in the street. But Republicans fought for civil rights, and they fought for the rights of our people. I'm not going to turn my back on the Republican Party just because there's some things that need to be worked on. Because overall, if you want to make it in this country, you can. You can. And you guys see, regardless if you are Republican or Democrat or liberal, I couldn't get that. Even if you're liberal, I let you all speak. I don't censor you guys unless it's, disrespectful, but I let you guys speak and speak your mind. Pretty much. You know that the South became Republican after the Civil Rights Act was passed. I'm in a cult. Cosmo, I'm not in a cult. I think it's a cult to say that I should belong to the Democratic Party just because I'm black, and I have to go along with what they promise things each election, and you don't see it done. Donald Trump is doing everything they said he was going to do. He gets a lot of pushback, and he does have to deal with Congress and the Supreme Court and all of that. Like, of course, there's a process, but Donald Trump is doing what he said he was going to do, and that was to strengthen the economy. Still needs work, but I can tell you the cost of eggs is lower. Because I went to go buy some eggs the other day. I live in California, and the price has definitely gone down. It went from like 12 something to $5 where I could buy eggs. Okay. Bitch baby, don't start with me. Donald Trump is a criminal. So, you guys. Thank you, Javier. Has gas gone down? Is that what gas is half price of Biden? Exactly. Gas has gone down. So you guys know that the price of things have gone down. You guys know that. The color of my skin doesn't matter. I threw that in there because I was talking about I was talking about things related to race a little bit. I don't even like the idea of race. I believe that we're in America and we are all Americans. I would love to get rid of the titles that go along with it because we're all American people, all of us. And you can make it if you want to make it. You can. There's really no excuse. Yes, there's stumbling blocks. I'm not blind to that fact. But if you want to overcome them, if you want to find opportunity, I mean, we can. We're in a great country where we can make it if we want to. We have a lot of resources that they don't have in other countries, but I would like those resources to be used for American citizens. Now, if you become naturalized or you are legal here, that's different. But, you know, you support him. Hopefully, are you drunk or uneducated? How you know who's American? It's not. You missed my point. You missed my point. Most countries would try to silence her for speaking her mind. That's why I said this is a great country. Her only stumbling blocks are the ones. The only stumbling blocks are the ones that you create for yourself. I believe. No, we didn't even talk about Trump accounts. I never hear people talk about that. Putting, money. I put a video. I showed it to you guys. Donald Trump next year, because of a private donator, putting $1,000 in kids under 10 years old accounts. As long as the family makes less than 150, let that 150,000 a year. Let that get interest. Nobody talks about the good things that Donald Trump is doing. I talked about Donald Trump signing an executive order to move marijuana from a Schedule I drug to a Schedule III drug, which would make it eligible for research. Doctors would be able to prescribe it, how they prescribe Norco and other types of pain medication. These things are long overdue, you guys, and Donald Trump is making moves to do it, and I really, really appreciate that that he's trying to get these things done before he leaves the office. And hopefully JD Vance, that's what I want to win for 2028, can carry on what Donald Trump has been doing and let this work continue. Cosmo, okay. Yeah, legalize marijuana. That'll solve your problems. Well, we cannot deny its medicinal purposes, but it's definitely a controlled substance. But to say, I did a stream about marijuana once. I had people arguing with me that marijuana was a drug or not. So we know that it's a drug. If it's legalized and it's a controlled substance, then it's going to be regulated how you use it. Okay. Better than pain pills, right? And the only reason why we know for marijuana to be a Schedule I drug and to say that it's as dangerous as heroin, they should have reclassified it a long time ago. Okay. So that should be done. And I don't smoke at all. Rob, what are you talking about? He doesn't use, hold on. That's not the comment I was looking for. Where'd it go? Elizabeth. let's address Elizabeth right now. He doesn't use any Congress or type of process. He does. He's been back and forth with the Supreme Court about a lot of things. Donald Trump has used this executive power a few times, but nobody talks about Obama using his executive power around 32 times. No one cried he wasn't going through Congress. It's legalized in some states, but it's still it's not legalized on a federal level, carrying. So yes, it's legalized in some states. And even if it becomes a Schedule 3 drug, it doesn't make it legal. It's just, what do you call it? It doesn't make it legal on a federal level. But it will be a federally controlled substance that can be prescribed. Oh, Biden or Obama are not the president now. Bush baby, you're way off. I think you're just trying to argue. I think that you just, weren't you leaving, Bush baby? What about Cuba? What about Cuba? Truck drivers can't smoke it. They shouldn't be able to smoke it. Obama didn't go through Congress when he dropped. Thank you. Release the files. We already spoke about the files. The files have been, a lot of the files have been released, and that is not what we are talking about. I already mentioned the files, and I already said that if they could have released those files during the Biden administration, especially when the Democrats had control over Congress. Okay. So okay, you'll follow me. All right, you guys, y'all have any other thoughts for me? Epstein files are a hoax. Focus on peace and prosperity. You said truckers shouldn't be allowed to smoke marijuana while they're driving. No, because it's illegal to drive under the influence. I don't think anyone should drive under the influence. Hold on, you guys. Let me use my phone for the comments. No, we should be sober when we're on the road, right? All right, let me see what I got going on here. I can't get my chat. It's just easier for me to use my phone. Oh, wait, let me turn it down. I can't get my... Go to sleep. Stop telling me to go to sleep. Seem to have an attitude. Why? You don't see your comments flat? No, okay, I'm just going to look for comments. That's... All right, you guys. I might, but these people are keeping me busy. Oh, you guys. So thank you so much for the super sticker. Thank you. That was a lot tonight, you guys. Thank you so much. It's so for real. I appreciate you. Thank you. Look at my dog appreciates you too. 90% of Americans drive under the influence daily. I'm not sure about those statistics, but it doesn't make it right. All right, you guys, I'm going to lay it down. Thank you guys for hanging out with me. I appreciate you. I need to rest up for tomorrow. It's a lot to come here and bring you guys the news like this. It's a lot, and I know I'm going to get insults. I know I'm going to get a lot of slack. But for those of you that do support me, you bear with me, because sometimes I get a little, it's a lot. Thank you, Dirty Bam. Thank you. But I do appreciate you guys that do support me. And even if you do not agree with me, I appreciate the ones that are respectful enough to have a conversation, because that's really what it's all about, right? Having a conversation, being able to understand each other. I believe that we all want the same thing, right? We want to be able to protect our families, things like that. But there's a right way to do it. And I believe that I know that there's a hidden agenda. When you're saying anybody can come into this country any way that they want, doesn't matter if drugs or other things are coming into this country, doesn't matter. That goes against America's interest, you guys. And that's all I'm gonna say. I barely subscribed today. Thank you, Dirty Bell, for subscribing. Thank you, guys. That's wait. Oh no, that's not what I meant to highlight. Trinidad, you hung in there. I love you too, friend. I love you too. Close the borders. Close the borders. That's what I wanted to highlight right there. All right, you guys, that was a lot. Dr. Manhattan, you held me down tonight. The dog is trying to protect you from the trolls. I know. Fox News got you messed up. Nobody wants drugs. I didn't say anybody wanted drugs, but to say, see, Cosmo, that's a prime. Thank you, Kevy Kev. Thank you. Yummy, that's interesting. To say that nobody wants drugs, they're brought into the country. You can't deny that. So, Cosmo, you're in denial. You just want to argue for the sake of arguing, and that's okay. You kept the chat busy, so thank you for that. Okay? Bye, you guys.